For me, as a new associate professor here, this was one of the first events that I attended. It wasn't hosted by us at that time, it was in a different format, but our director of this event, Abby Mott, was also director of that group. And so we've been fortunate, and I want to thank Abby for putting together this lunch and learn series for us, because it's really a place where you can come and be with your people, your tribe, you know, to find others that are really engaged in research. At Translational Health Research Center, we kind of build on a philosophy that we're better together. And we try really, really hard to not even say that S word, you know, silos, because it's destructive, and it's not in our best interest to stay in our own way. So what we really try to do is connect people across, and all of our programs have some link that creates teams or groups or collaborations or opportunities in ways that aren't found in one academic unit. And so today we have two speakers that kind of really embody that, and also provide opportunities for you in that regard. Our first speaker is Jennifer Speed, who is our new Assistant Vice President for Research Development, or is that right, Assistant Development? Yeah, Assistant Vice President for Research Development in the Vice President for Research Office. Jennifer came from Princeton University, where she put together a lot of really large collaborative grants. And so I think that learning from her about ways to do that here at Texas State will be a really valuable talk. So I'm really grateful that you are here to hear it, because I'm excited to hear it too. And then our second speaker will be one of our faculty fellows that is sort of working on a project that is multifaceted and really, really interesting and exciting. And so it is, again, an opportunity to see how you can take something that you do, that you have expertise or research interests in, and then take that and build it into something much, much larger. And so we'll have Nicole Wagner speak second. So our first speaker is Jennifer Speed. Thank you.
I'm really grateful to Melinda for having me here today. And the most important thing I can say is that if you're considering a larger scale proposal or the project, call us. That's the best thing you can do. And I give Melinda and her team a lot of credit. And you probably know if you've been around Texas State either a week or a month or 25 years, the place has grown really, really quickly. A little too fast. First of all, I'm here the whole situation. And Texas State grew research like most universities, whether it's 5 or 20 or 100 years ago, didn't sit down and say, how can we become a research university? And happened accidentally as people did more research. And then the institution had to catch up. And some people who just had a knack for it were really good at it. Some people stumbled into it and got better at it. Some people didn't quite know how to do it, they got pushed out. I want to support everybody who has the idea that they want to be involved in research in some way or another. We want to make it easier for you. So part of my role, you know, that the position was created for me, I'm super grateful. I'm a lot closer to an H+RRN than I used to be. It's really, really important to me and my family. So I have a job because Texas State is committed to growing the infrastructure to support research. And one of the things that's in my job description is actually to help grow larger scale proposals. Now, I know this is being recorded, I'm gonna say this, my boss cares about the number. We care about everybody, but like there's a number, like we, you know, research dollars equate to certain kinds of status, we get certain kinds of funding from the state. And I am all for that, but I really am focused on research. Like we want to help people grow their capacity. The number that's attached to that is something different. And large scale proposals are hard, they're really, really competitive. The very best schools are competing for a small number of larger scale awards, so you have to get better and better at being able to apply for them. Well, how do you do that? Some of it is trial and error, but it's really has less to do with the research, because lots of people have really great research ideas. It has a lot to do with being able to work in teams very, very differently from the way that we are trained. I'm a humanities scholar. I work mostly with scientists and engineers. I have yet to meet a person who got training in grant project management and interpersonal dynamics and personnel and managing shadow budgets as part of their graduate training, so you have to learn to do it in your career, whether you're a full-time researcher, faculty member, while you're doing it as part of the grant. And so my first slide, I just put this as, I call it building relationships and growing research. All right, I gotta point that way. Not very profound, it's okay. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Or did you just do it here?
Okay, I won't touch it.
Either way.
It's working.
Okay, so I said, actually, the best way to be a researcher on a team project is really to know how you function. And that is like know what your research is, what your central research is, what you're interested in doing, what you're willing to do. And I think one of the really strange way to phrase it, but some people have a really narrow lane, and they only want to stay in that lane. They're not that lane, they might think that they're not going to have much fun, they're not going to do it. That might be you, and that's okay. Some people are willing to consider a broader range of things. And then you can have mission creep, you can get drawn into the research. Some people, that's part of the fun. I love to work that way. I always come back to my center. But you have to know what you're comfortable with if somebody invites you to join a team, or if you decide that you want to lead one that's close to your research area. So just acknowledge what it is you're comfortable with in your own research and your experience. I love it when a young faculty member says, I would like to go after this $6 million grant as their very first one. I love that kind of enthusiasm. But because you're around people with disaster, not because you're not brilliant, not because you're not talented, but it asks you to really ramp up your skill set in no time. So just, be mindful, push yourself. Maybe you need to partner with them. I love to see people, especially in their early career, partner with someone on a larger grant as a co-PI, as a senior personnel, step up to a co-PI, and then maybe lead a major thrust in a larger proposal. But it's not that we want to, ever discourage you from taking on a big project. We just don't, we want to see everyone succeed and not get burned out. So just know what your capabilities are. Your capacity. If I'm working with a faculty member, any size grant, I generally am obnoxious about asking people to put together a timeline. And I watch as they pack a lot of activities between the 15th of December and the 31st of December. And grades are due, everyone's exhausted, and your in-laws are coming. So you really have to think about really what is your capacity to do that? Are you expecting a baby? Are you adopting a child? Are you buying a house? Are you, is someone in your family on leave? That's not the best time to plan your biggest grant activities. And so these are just the realities of our project. So we want you to succeed. Be mindful of that. Build that into your project. We can all make sure that that works, and you can alternate with team members. It would be sensitive to what's realistic. And so I would say I've been working at my own base with other people for more than 20 years. And I have yet to see a grant where somebody put something together and was like, you're kind of lazy, you're not doing enough. Almost everybody tells you it's too much because they want to show the fundraiser are worthy of the money, that they are capable. But generally, people think that they can do more than they can. So working with a professional can say, hang on a second, you need 6 research strands, maybe you could do 4. You need to do this in 2 years, or maybe you could do it in 3. And this is where this is hard to do on a short deadline, but if you talk to people who are professionals, talk to Melinda, talk to Evie, talk to me, we can say, we can help you look at the scope of your entire project and understand what's feasible. And then your approach to leadership. A lot of people say, well, I don't like to tell people what to do. If you want to lead a large project, you are going to have to tell people what to do. You can do it nicely, you can do it firmly, sometimes you have to fire people, sometimes you have to say, your research thrust isn't working out. Time to write that out. Department of Energy requires you to write that in. How do you get rid of, they don't say that. How do you address underperforming team members? So you have to be sure, and if you are not the person who is able to do that because that's not your personality, you've got to team up with somebody who can do that. Most people, again, don't learn these as graduate students. They learn these skills as they get a little bit older, as they, take on more projects, have larger teams to manage. But your ability to deliver on that grant and maybe to everything the other one depends a lot on your own sense of your capacity for leadership, whatever that is. So I think the best way to succeed is to know what you're up for and to be able to think through some of those perspectives. Okay. So, Abby gave me some prompts, which were very helpful. So one of the questions is how does or how will Texas State approach institutional proposal? So I think this is a little new for Texas State, and this is actually a reason I was really excited to come to Texas State. As it was mentioned, I came from Princeton with lots of really independent people who don't like anyone to tell them what to do, and sometimes that is not a recipe for success. We had lots of great proposals that got funded. But so I would say that large scale proposals tend to come up in one of two ways. One is Melinda says, I got this project, there's a good funding match, we're gonna go, we need some ancillary support. Melinda knows what to do, but you might need the support from IT, we need to establish a position, we might need some more space. So that's sort of a PI-led, what I call institutional proposal that involves lots and lots of people. Lots of crossing divisions, crossing colleges. The other kind is what I often think of as an institutional proposal. It's where it's sort of led by the institution in some way, where someone says, the president says, we need to tackle facilities, or we need a student success project that's going to involve 8 departments, student success, the health center, and athletics. That's not really a good fit typically for one person. No PI, no research university usually has all of that under his or her belt. And so an institutional proposal is one actually that our office can help to lead. It doesn't mean that I'm the PI or that Evie is the PI or that Shriek is the PI, but it means that our office will help spearhead and say, this is what seems to be in the best interest of the institution based on what the president told us, or based on what Cynthia Hernandez told us, or what the regents told us. So those work very, very differently. Plenty of the first case is sort of a big large scale proposal. Someone, if a PI has already been identified or has self-identified, we would say, how can we help you? And again, I'm looking at Melinda, she's her leading this center here. What can we do to help you in this case with this large proposal that you have in mind? And someone who's got a lot of experience might know. Sometimes someone who's a great person to lead the project, knows what they're doing, they might not see the gaps in it because they haven't done that before. And everyone might say, hang on a second, we see this as an area that you might need to build up. So if we can work with you, our approach might be, in that case, the whole way through the process, we're gonna stick to you like glue, whether you like it or not, because we want to help you succeed. Just stay out of your way a little bit. I'm a little more bossy than I think Evie is, a little more obnoxious, but say, I really think that you might need our guidance here. And we're willing to take that risk because we want to see you succeed in the proposal. We don't want the reviewers to say, hang on, there's a gap. We want to be the people to say it so that you can address it before it's up, to the review panel. In terms of the institutional one, we've got a couple, we've already done this. I've only been here 4 months, and we've done this in 2 different ways, where we had 2 proposals that our office led. One was sort of close coordination. It was led by Cynthia Hernandez. Is that student success or student support? Yeah. I'm still learning. And that we could provide a lot of support and help saying, well, this is clearly an institutional priority, but who are the right people to get involved? So Evie helped to solicit white papers and concepts, asking researchers, how do you think that you could play a part in this project? And that can be really successful in anything that we've done before with projects. And then we try to get all the right people in the room, like let them self-select, and then we can fill in a gap elsewhere. The one that I was working on, that I led, I had to go around campus on really short notice. We didn't have a lot of time, and saying, okay, director of engineering, okay, director of sponsored, of shared research operations, other offices on campus, and try to fit together a proposal really quickly. Now, in both of those cases, those scenarios, sometimes there are hurt feelings. So everybody's at this frustration. Not everybody can fit in, and people don't have the bandwidth. Their work is not a good fit. And our focus, very selfishly, is what is going to get funded, right? If we try to include everybody when they're not a good fit, and it's going to affect the competitiveness of the proposal, that doesn't serve anybody at Texas State. So our office sometimes has to help make that hard decision. We try to do it in the best way that we can. But our lens, what is our approach to institutional proposals? What can we do to help make sure that this is the most competitive proposal that Texas State can put forward. That's our lens for success. Now, let's say if we're doing that, we say, hang on a second, this is a really amazing PI, and this is not a good fit for that project. We look back and say, you weren't included in this project. Where can we find a good fit for your research? We want to use that entire process as a way of being inclusive, to make sure that if someone sent a concept that didn't get included, we reach out and say, this is amazing. Where can we find a fit for this? We try to do that with the limited submissions. If, limited submissions, we can only have a few go forward. Let's say we have 3 slots, we might get 10 proposals, we might get 4. We don't want that person who had a great idea but didn't make it into the competition to give up. So we want to bring more people, use the institutional process to bring more people into the field and encourage them, because our office has the capacity to do that. Any questions? Pretty general. Okay. And then, another question is some very specific things. We're going to ask a big proposal. Who's going to get involved? If there's, I actually did this quite a bit at Princeton. Princeton didn't have to be the lead for my office for me to get involved. We want, because with really, really big proposals, you might have 8 universities, you might have 10 universities involved. We don't have to be driving the bus to be in support of it. So if you come to us and say, I have this amazing project, a large scale, messy project I'm working on with the University of Minnesota, or Baylor, Scott and White, what can we do? We want to find out how can we contribute to it? How can we support the other organization that might be leading it? We want all boats to rise there. We want them to be successful. We might say, how many partners are there? We would love to be able to do everything. Our office is 4 people maybe. We have a pretty small team. We can't take on all the projects. So we tend to be more likely to get involved. Let's say you've got a national lab and you've got a police department and you have a school district. The more partners you have, the more complex the rules are. The more complex are the agreements, and so our office can help absorb some of that messiness and try to get you all to be able to focus on the research. And then we do have to ask the question, how big is the goal? Once we go larger to the ones that we're more likely to get involved in, we just don't have the bandwidth. For others, we have to be really strategic. So we don't want to say, here's a call, I'm sorry, no help for you. But sometimes we do have to make decisions. Larger grants are the ones that we're more likely to help. But we're trying to get some more support for that. We definitely get involved when there's cost share or matching. Some people work in a field where they never see cost share or matching. But if the university is being asked to contribute in kind support or cash, we have to be really, really careful about making sure that we're stewarding that investment very carefully. It's from the department, and sometimes $1,000 cost share is as hard to come up with as $100,000 based on the need and where it's coming from. But one of the reasons I put this up here is that I find sometimes, especially people who are not experienced in grant land, which is what I call it, they see this grant requires a 50% match. It's a $2 million grant. I don't have that money in my budget. I'm not going to apply. Like, we don't ever want that. We don't want that to be a start where that's a barrier. Someone says, cost share. I don't know how that works. Or I'm just not going to apply for it. I see that a lot in the humanities because there's not as much money there. But we want to get involved early on and understand what the cost is, who it's coming from, who the project is going to benefit. Like, we start out with, okay, how can we make this work? I don't think we're going to be able to come up with that amount of money. We want to start with, we think that we can do this. Let's find out the best way to do it. My plan would not like me saying that because he's the guy who has to come up with it. Okay. And another question is, how much help and guidance does the team need? If your team needs the most help, it doesn't mean that we're not going to help you. Sometimes it's the team that we feel like is going to make the biggest investment in the project. We just want to understand that at the very beginning. Earlier in my career, I used to assume that everybody who came to me applied and acted like they knew what they were doing actually did. And I realized that it's not help. I have to ask more probing questions like, do you know what this form is? Are we aware of the details? Because we don't want to get closer to the end and realize that something is missing, that there's a misunderstanding. And so we really do want to understand what the team needs, the level of experience. It's not to discourage you. We just want to understand, what the landscape is. And this is an important question. What are the stakes if the project does not get funded? Higher stakes, obviously, because of bigger investment. I'll try to say what higher stakes are. I mean, sometimes there's pieces of equipment that I can't even pronounce names of, but if they go down, it'll shut down the whole department. If they're a program in their labs, that's high stakes. Even if I don't understand what that piece of equipment is, or if it's something that there's an intervention that's deeply needed in the student success area, if we don't do it, students are going to continue to flunk out of math or see a particular barrier, and it's something that's really, really urgent. That's the case where these core resources, and it could be something that's outside of campus, it's in partnership with the campus. So again, sometimes with limited resources, we have to say, okay, how should we get involved? Where is it most appropriate for our support? For instance, the light talk, sometimes we go all in, or we do a little early as the semester. But again, it's, you have an idea for what will come to us, and we'll say, okay, what do you need? How can we be of assistance? That's our starting point. So yeah, so we're gonna work, we'd love to, sometimes people call, this has been my experience in my career, it's due in a week, can you take a look at this? I can, we can. We probably cannot do as much at that point. But some people don't wanna bother us too early, because they don't wanna bother, please. If you have an idea, you think something might be, if you have an idea for a big project you think might be coming in a year or a 2 years, we would love to start working with you now. You want to meet monthly? Let's talk about what the barriers are. What do you need to have lined up? Is there a position? Is there a partnership? Is there an agreement? That is really where we excel, is that long-term planning, a long-term ramp, whatever you might want to call it. Because we, again, our office can help lift the burden of some of those logistical challenges and help you stay focused on your research. This is just a quick question that Abby asked. How are teams put together? Again, we usually defer to what the PI does, but if it's an institutional proposal, we'll try to get, cast a wide net. It might have been the last one. And I just stuck this at the end. I mean, people have a different idea for what is a large scale proposal. I mean, I'm in humanities. 50,000 is mighty big. In health, and then, a clinical trial, that's maybe not even worth getting out of bed for. So we don't have a hard line for, what is a center of institute, what is the large scale proposal versus a smaller, but smaller ones tend to have maybe one PI, smaller scale project, smaller dollar amount. Actually, Texas State, I'll tell you, we're seeing a lot of proposals that are single PI that are under $100,000. I'd like to see more single PI $300,000 to $400,000 grants. It's sort of the minimum, like a small NSF grant is $300,000 to $400,000. I'm really trying to get more of those. That I think that's a minimum. Multi-PI could be 2 people within an institution, different institutions, centers and institutes. $2 million is sort of an arbitrary cutoff. You can do a lot under $2 million, but usually we're looking at the much more complex grants that are at the center level. But I did want to add this here, once you get up to this center institute more than $2 million, that's where you get a lot more complexity. It's not just your research, it's what is your broader impact? What is your community engagement? What kind of curriculum are you going to develop? Who are your community stakeholders, your government stakeholders? And those are the kinds of agreements that take longer to negotiate. People often think they just have to do that on their own. Our office can help with that. Institutional commitments. Any questions? Yes.
So one of the things that we try to do is, for example, the faculty fellows, we have 2 years of faculty fellows, and we've tried to sort of highlight them and promote them and their scholarship. But if you're an individual who's wanting to maybe, put your foot into the grant world on a team, how do you promote yourself to you and to, I know I used to go and meet everybody, but we're so big now that that's a really big task for you to know. And it's easy to go to the same people over and over and over, and then they get really bogged down and worse at what they need because they're overloaded. So how do you suggest people, should they write a position paper? Should they have a website? What should they do to say, I would like to do this, if they're not going to be at the top of the list in academic analytics already?
I would say if people are interested, reach out to us. That way, we know that there's a spot for someone who specializes in, bioethics with a special interest in turtles, and we happen to have met with you already, we're gonna say that's the perfect person for that. So knowing that people are interested, but when I was preparing for my interview for Texas State, and every probably every day since I've looked at the faculty profiles page. I'm looking at that all the time. I thought if someone did website analytics, they would say, why is someone in New Jersey looking at our page, 10 times a day? I found it so helpful, and I do even now when I'm looking for something. If you want to put yourself out as a researcher, tell everybody, because I see this all the time. People say, gosh, I need someone to fill in here, but I don't want to bother anybody, right? Go bother some people. If you're the one who wants to be on teams, you will not get included in projects if you don't knock on doors and say, hey, what are you working on? It's not, it's not anything creepy. It's not anything inappropriate. Like, this is how someone will know to put you on a proposal, is if they know about your specialty. And we've talked about some ways in our office to build these connections, just so that faculty can meet. Where you're right, there's 2,000 faculty. It would take us quite a long time to meet everyone, and then by the time we got to that list, we'd have a new group to meet with. So I would say just let people know what you're aware of. Email your colleagues, share with your friends, make sure your faculty profile is updated. And if you have colleagues at other institutions, tell them. I mean, and I see people, all their co-authors. Tell your co-authors, hey, are you putting together a grant? I'd love to be on it. That's all you have to say. And then that will jog their memory when they're working on their larger scale proposals, or even a pair. Oh, this person is really, because again, they're like, I don't want to call her Katie. She looks like she's really busy. But do it. Just let them know that you're available and interested. And if it comes along, you don't have to be able to say, this is not a good time. Call me next time on your next project.
With your experience at Princeton, when you arrived, you've been here about 4 months, correct? Were there any aha moments for what you might tell a Texas State faculty member that this is a better way to get there? When you were in Princeton, here, is there any major kind of insight into a state institution looking for that type of work?
I would say plan. If you have even an inkling that there's a center, institute, large scale grant that you want to apply for, whether it's 6 months or a year, tell us now. Because it is the last minute planning, the scrambling, the budget, the getting the letters of support, that just kills the process at the end. Like, I had to pull people out, like, we've written them into the narrative, we don't have the required letter, we have to essentially unravel the narrative like an hour before it's due. I'm still traumatized all the time. But I actually looked at a couple folks in engineering who had a center they want to apply for in 2 years. That is perfect. So plan ahead. And seriously, some of these very, very large center grants, we intend to invest high dollars with outside consulting firms to help us do that, like $25,000 for these gazillion-dollar centers. But we can't do that on short notice. That's something you have to plan out a couple years. If you can plan ahead, you're going to be ahead of most of your competitors at all levels of priority classification.
With that same mindset, then, are you saying that we should tell, like, I'm a research coordinator, so we should tell the PIs that they should come to you even if they're not convinced that the actual funding will be available? Because that's always the catch-22. You wait until, you won't get involved until they actually post a thing, and then they post, oh, we got a month. Okay, quick, do something.
Right, so we have to be strategic, because this one that seems to come out every year, every 2 years, is a very, very likely, because if you call a program officer, they will never, ever, ever, ever tell you that they're not allowed to tell you that, right? Even if it's come out every year for 25 years, they can't say it's definitely coming next year. So we can sort of do some calculated risk and say this looks very likely, absolutely. And we would say, we're not sure this comes out. What are the hardest pieces? Do you need an MOU with a school district or a healthcare organization? That's going to take like 6 months and 25 lawyers. Let's get started on that. We think this might happen. So you can do everything you can to lay the foundation that's sort of low effort, low energy. And then when you decide you're ready to go, then the easier part is the research and finalizing your details and your budget. So that's my suggestion. That is not a waste of time. And then, because I'm an optimist, I would say, if you have a great idea, even if it's not, you haven't found that particular funding, we would love to find another match for that great idea. Maybe it's a little smaller, maybe it's a little bigger, maybe it's off a side track. So don't let that idea and that ambition for a research project to go to waste. That we don't want you to do that. All done? All right, thank you so much. Thank you.
So many things that Jennifer talked about spoke to me. So I'm Nicole Wagner. I am an assistant professor in agricultural sciences and also here. And I'm also the project director for Bobcat Farm. So Bobcat Farm is at Freeman Branch. It is a plot intensive acre and a half of fruit and vegetable production. So we teach labs there for agriculture, business farm management, fruit and vegetable production, that kind of thing. And also a place that I am developing for research. So this is just kind of picture a team. Managing teams is something that is there's definitely an art to it. So I want to talk about that. So how to find and succeed with your fun team. And I want to talk about some of the experiences that I've had and some learning lessons throughout this all. So what I want to talk about today is just some 3 main topics that I've learned through my funded work and how to find a great team, and then what I've learned about the behaviors of a great team to set up your project for success, critical considerations, and then also what are the actual things that those team members are doing that I've learned over time of being on these pretty interdisciplinary teams. So just a little bit of my background. So I have some other grants that have been not interdisciplinary, but these are the big ones. So just to give you a little bit of like the framework for where I'm coming from. Evergreen was the first one that was working with engineering and agriculture, controlled environment systems. And so these are the 2 main disciplines at Texas State College of Science and Engineering, College of Applied Arts, really different. Then we also had some partners who were from San Antonio colleges, so they were also in the grant. That was a $1 million grant. And I'm just high-level things, student research, student scholarships. I personally mentored 41 students. You get the picture, right? So a lot going on here. This is another one. This was the very beginning grant that was part of the Small Producers Initiative on campus, if you've ever heard of that. This is a conference grant, outreach to farmers. And again, it'll make me clear kind of why I'm spending a little time here talking about these things. Blue Water, another one, engineering, ag, biology, more student research, student scholarships. And then the last one is a $5 million one that I'm on. And that's also with outside partners, AgriLife, Extension, and so on and so forth. More student research, student internships, career placement. And what I want to talk about with, a lot of these wonderful, big impact with students is just being very strategic to set yourself up for success. So first of all, just to piggyback off of what Jennifer was saying, how to find a great team. What I love about the Texas State community is that it's very friendly. It's very easy to put yourself out there and engage with people and create this camaraderie community. And so I would say that this is really how I got my start. Thankfully, my first boss at Texas State was Evie. And so I was already, going to these events and meeting Jessica and working with Jessica. But, that is how you get to meet immediately people who are engaged and who are wanting to be part of teams, because we are a big community. However, there is a smaller part of that larger community that are really going after these grants and these big projects and really ambitious. And that's these events really get you there fast. So being involved in the Texas State community, it can also be just service related, committees. There's all kinds of social events and fun runs and things like that. And those are important too. I serve on environmental services committee, for example. And this isn't in any particular order, but I guess in a little way it is, in that I say utilizing RSP and RC resources because they only have so much bandwidth. So if you can help yourself and get yourself out there, that goes a long way because they get a lot of requests for help. So I find if you put yourself out there, people are really receptive. And then I will also say, especially if you're in an area where you don't have the research infrastructure for what is in your wheelhouse, and that happens, absolutely. I have seen my colleagues that are so smart, and they have leveraged their previous affiliations. like with A&M or wherever it may be. So again, they've kept those close context. And so if you don't have, that piece of equipment or that farm to work on or that, experiment station, they do. And it will make your life so much easier, especially if you're an assistant professor and you've got to meet these benchmarks, right? So that's, so a little bit, I want to take it back to, what are the goals of why we're doing this anyway? Because really, great teams and great team members are going to help you get to your goals. If they're not helping you get to your goals and it's making things worse, like Jennifer said, it can be a disaster, right? And you can lead stress, and for all your work, you're basically for all that effort, you're actually have gone backwards, right? So just a little bit of review. We all know this, but I think it's good to be intentional and remember what are our goals, why we're doing this. Provide evidence of scholarship, acquire equipment, supplies, data, access to, data. This is sciences, social sciences, this is everybody, right? Enable student mentorship. Our students can help us, to further, all of these goals, and then via the time, that's a big one, especially if you have a high teaching mode, really important there. Next, societal, of course, facilitate outreach and dissemination, not just with the academic dissemination, but just translating to the public, right? That's so powerful. Enabling student financial support. So if you are a funded project and you can fund students, that equates to changing students' lives and retention, and then just seeing them go on to be super successful is amazing and making a positive impact. Personal, of course, just the financial support, improve scholarship, happiness, and sense of accomplishment, right? So these are our goals, and great team members help you reach these goals. But team members who are underperforming, like Jennifer said, it happens, and then you're not getting to these goals, and you're like, how did I get myself in this position, right? So I have learned over, since basically 2016, really acutely being involved intimately with these grants from the proposal process all through execution and after, what some of the behaviors are of great team members. And I found that great team members spend time to acquire grant writing skills. I can tell you that list that I had of grants, probably a couple of them would not have happened had it not been for the grant writing skills that were acquired. And not everybody on the team had those skills. That can create some problems. So, so when you have a strong team leader, even if they may be the one without the great grant skills, great grant writing skills, if they at least acknowledge that this is a really important skill set and it takes time to invest in, that automatically gets you further along too. I will say that I had the benefit of starting with Evie, and hands down, it was the reason why some of these grants happened and were rated really high right out the gate. Instead of in the first grant that we got, the $1 million one was the number one rated in our category. And this was an HSI education grant, but had a really pretty slim funding rate. So I can't say this enough. I know we're all busy, but taking the time to know, to learn the art of this and the strategy, it definitely is so different from writing journal articles. This is a big one. Contribute to the grant proposal process and balance workload. So if you have some team members, they might be the people that you want on your team, but if they're too busy to contribute to the grant proposal process, this could be a red flag. And it continues to be so, because everything's contextual, of course. Maybe they really are busy now and they're gonna have time later, but you have to have that conversation, because that has definitely been some setback and definitely fallen on my shoulders as an assistant professor, taking time away from publications, etc. So that's a big one. Great team members are aware. They're aware of different pressure points from the perspective of different career levels. There are different pressure points for the assistant professors, associate, and full, right?
that departments and colleges can operate very differently. Some colleges have high teaching loads, some don't. Some have more access to equipment, some don't. Some have more post-award support than others, admin support. Some are small and have, you know, a ton of service commitment, even at the assistant professor level. And so when there's an understanding of the pressure points of other people in the team, that's really powerful because you can work through this together and it just doesn't feel like, oh, the workload is maybe imbalanced or et cetera. You can keep morale high there. Great team members effectively communicate. And seeking input from all instead of kind of just bulldozing decisions unilaterally. Sometimes, you know, you have like the PI, sometimes people need to make those unilateral decisions, but when it's happening too much, and again, another red flag, because we are also dealing with different expertise. So if you're the expert in one area, and yet you said, hey, this is the way I think it should be done, come to find out that's not how it's done, right? That can be a little bit of red flag, not setting up the team for success. Giving an advance notice. So again, meetings, for example, again, we have different, you know, workloads. And so just because this team member over here has one class a semester means like over here, I'm booked solid with labs and this and that, you know, and so having an advance notice for different events and meetings, CCing on emails when appropriate. I mean, all of these things seem common sense, but I think I've learned that it's in practice, they don't happen, right? And then give feedback. I think giving constructive feedback and getting thanks too goes a long way. So, and then also, I've got some wonderful mentoring from some PIs that have really, I don't know if they even realized that they were mentoring me, but I learned a lot from them. So that's, you know, I think that's really helpful. And I think especially with publishing, we all know that that's something that really gets looked at when it comes up, you know, coming up for tenure. So mentorship. And then double dip also, this is something that I love that Melinda talks about too, which is, let's say you have a grant and it was like an education grant. Some of those grants I listed before were education grants. And I was too green to know that at the time, I should have been thinking about, okay, I'm gonna do all these wonderful things and support all these students and all these students going out to do great things. And I'm developing this curriculum and I'm doing this outreach, but wait a minute, how can I make that into research? You need to do that right away. Otherwise, before you know it, it's too late. Wait a minute, I didn't get ILB. I missed my opportunity for data, and then it's just not efficient. So you want to double dip as much as possible if you're going to be ambitious with these grants. And I've learned that along the way, just so much more efficient. All right, so what are some considerations when choosing to be on a team is your time availability. This is just a snapshot from my schedule, and it doesn't even include research really on it at all, and grant writing. And so it's a lot of classes, a lot of meetings, it's a lot of and so being realistic with yourself about really how much can you accomplish and how much can you accomplish really well. Because the more that we load onto ourselves, I know that I get worse at my job. So time availability for everybody on the team. Also, the grant type is really important. I've noticed that I've been on some teams that they go after the grants that have been promoted, like the HSI education grants, but those are education, so there's a lot of education involved there. And when that happens, you've got a lot of students, you've got PCRs, you've got students coming to you with questions, etc. And you've got outreach events with the students, and you've got supplies and procurement. Or you have like the small producers grant where we've got conferences and now we're dealing with the public. And then, you know, is that setting up individual team members for success? It depends on where I think those team members are in their career too. What are the hallmarks of success? So grant type is important. And it's not to say don't go after an education grant if you're an assistant professor, but what I've learned the hard way is that education and outreach grants, and again, they can have components of all of them too. The education and outreach grants, there's a lot involved.
So, writing the grant is one thing, and we all know that that's a lot of work, but actually getting the grant and executing it is huge. So, and a lot of people, I think myself included, underestimate that, how you fit it into that previous schedule that you have that doesn't seem to kind of go away. More things keep piling onto it. This is a big one, infrastructure needs and the path of least resistance. So this is a picture of my research site. Now this is a picture of, and it is my research site. This is at Bobcat Farm. This is what we had to work with, right? This is degraded soil, super rocky. This is an irrigation ditch. And I'm turning this into, I want to grow plants and take all kinds of measurements. And it's like, whoa. And I don't know if you noticed this, but in the background here is basically like the bones of a greenhouse, right? And so that very first picture I showed you with the team, there was a gentleman in that picture who was the donor. He called me out of the blue. That's an interesting story, but to fund my work, right? And I was like, I sat on it, I couldn't say no, right? But it meant a pretty big sacrifice because we're starting from a place, right? And so, yeah, if you need infrastructure for what you want to do, think hard about how much it's going to go, how much energy and effort and time away from the other things that you're going to get evaluated on, what that realistically means. And this is kind of a before and after I like to show. This is where we are right now. We've got nice beds. We can do some research, have some students, working, really hard. We've got the greenhouses made progress. So my chair said to me, I said, I want to do plant science research, soil science and plant science research. And he basically was like, maybe you should get some data sets and, analyze them and write papers on that. And I was like, no, that's not, that's not, and now, he was really wise. I probably should have done that, but it's all gonna be okay. I was like hard-headed and like, I want to grow this. But to be, to also be real about it, like we are moving to R1 and we know what R1 looks like, and that means more research infrastructure. And so, in some disciplines, it really means maybe more than others too. And so it was like, I want to do this level of research, right? So I guess, big risk for big reward, right? But get a lot of stress. So then just to transition from the last thing I want to talk about, I know I'm running out of time, but the activities of successful teams. So I've noticed that they facilitate effective administrative systems. They may not have support from their college or department. So how are they going to navigate that? Because that's a reality. Well, one thing is they could add admin support to grant proposals, but that's a little bit easier said than done. Because some proposals, especially if you're starting smaller proposals, there's not enough room in the budget necessarily for a full FTE for the whole entire time of your grant. So how do we navigate that? That is a longer conversation, I think. But then also I have had the experience of being the hiring manager, and you can see a lot of these things here are funded by grants. And that is really something that's challenging. That's very challenging as an assistant professor. So, that needs to be really thought through. Can you do what you need to do with the level of admin support? How are you going to navigate this when it comes to PCRs for students, when it comes from procuring supplies, your own PCRs, buyouts, summer, whatever. I know that successful teams hold consistent meetings that in person or even virtually, but it's consistent. And they also use meeting polls. I know that I'm always amazed, like there are a lot of people that don't use meeting polls, and then you have all these transactional emails. So when you think about how can you reduce the one-way transactional emails, really important. It also is a model for students to adopt too, and then they get more efficient with their communication. Stay focused in meetings, agendas. Don't let meeting creep because we're all really busy. Unless you're of course at happy hour or something, but really like stay focused. I have been in meetings that should have been an hour and were 2.5 hours. Having deliverables, setting deliverables, especially for students, is really important. Again, they're learning and the students, and it can quickly just kind of go south. And then everyone gets a voice, of course, that seems common sense, but it often happens not enough. Using as much as you can automating project management software. This especially helps with shared files organizations, again, students. I will say here, I think there may be times when GroupMe works too, like, because if you're on the go, you know, you might have to have alternative communication methods. Delegating is also, you know, something I've had to learn. Sometimes it's manual labor in the case of my research area, and sometimes students, they might have internships and then they go to their summer internship and they're interns there from Cornell. And they're like, wait a minute, why don't we have all this stuff? And I have to remind them, like, they are getting a really unique skill set to learn the behind the scenes of what it takes to accomplish big things. And it's the project management skills that they're learning. They're learning how to think critically. They're not having a lab technician do things for them. I mean, I have to remind them and also kind of be a cheerleader, but then it's amazing what happens. And it can be really a bonding experience too. And then of course, double dip, like what I like to refer to is feeding two birds with one stone. So again, the double dip, I noticed that the really great team members do this. They do it masterfully, and I've learned from that. And then of course, setting boundaries. This is, of course, we all know, really hard to do, but we can get project creep. I think some of my experiences at the public, as much as we want to interact with the public, sometimes the public thinks that we have a lot of time, you know, and that in my case in agriculture, they think like we're like A&M. We answer phone calls of like, what is this bug and how do I plant this? And you know, there's just not enough time. So setting boundaries with maybe service work, especially when you're early on. And then the last thing, I actually had a number 7 here, is that attitude. I have noticed that really great team members have an attitude of gratitude, because we know we tend to focus on the things we need to do successful research and do, you know, or whatnot. But this attitude of gratitude, and then also saying thanks. And again, it passes on, it's contagious with students. So so that's another thing. I will say too that there was one more thing that I wanted to include here, was that I have noticed that when you have an especially large endeavor, developing an advisory committee. So some people might not be, you know, open enough to be on the grant, or maybe that's not quite their area, but having an advisory committee. So I was really overwhelmed and daunted with developing that platform. And before I got a grant, but actually I wrote that in. I was like, oh, advisory committee, I wrote it in, but I started whether or not I was gonna get this grant. And it was just been amazing. So Tony and Rebecca and Jim Van Overshield, I mean, some amazing people, and so many things have come out of it, that further connections. So it's kind of creating a life of its own. So I think that, and I learned that from some of the faculty in Health and Consumer Sciences about Healthy, because they have a steering committee. And I was like, that is brilliant, to bring in people and diverse perspectives to help guide and feel like you're not alone. So with that, I just wanted to include the email if anybody wants to reach out. I don't know if there's time for questions, but definitely, I think we have a couple minutes. Oh yeah.
One comment. First of all, congratulations on your work. I know Melinda and the faculty fellows and others that aren't official fellows that have great success when we do this program. But I just want to kind of emphasize some of the things you said. It's so critical. So health professions. For 30 years, we've used advisory boards in everything we do, including our own program accreditation and stuff. And when I got here 20 years ago, what you just said was so like, what? I mean, people didn't use advisory boards. So if you're in a program that doesn't use advisory boards, it's so helpful to give you that feedback, of real world feedback sometimes to help you shape your grant. And then the other piece, I've been saying this long and too, I love that you put in your talk, the double dip piece, the celebrate piece, the attitude piece is so critical. And I would even encourage you, I mean, this is a perfect piece for the conversation, a marketing piece. Not that you're not busy enough. I mean, this type of stuff, I mean, over my career, I've had these same concepts with students and faculty where you go, you know, how could they not know this? Like a syllabus. I still talk to this to students. Why don't you look at the schedule and plan 3 months in advance for a paper? The same thing you're talking about. It can be a student or an assistant professor or a tutor
Right.
that still don't
Right.
know these things, so.
Like, we didn't have training on it, you know, we don't have learning.
Yeah. Yes, really good job. Appreciate you.
So I agree about advisory boards, but I just because I just was going through this, I went to school and meetings and things. I think the university is changing a little bit our ability to do that unilaterally, so do check with advancement. And I think that there could be a possibility for help, but also they're doing an amazing job of really kind of organizing our corporate engagement a little bit more. I mean, in a really positive way, not in a, like controlling and blocky way. So they would be a great resource. So if you were going to do advisory board, I would recommend talking to Nicole or others, not this Nicole and advancement, others. Then the other thing is there's a great thing that I try to do, but it's hard. And whenever I get excited about something, my mentor always told me, okay, but what are you gonna not do? Do you have extra time right now? Well, no. Okay, then what are you gonna not do? Because if you pick up something else, you already have a full plate, then you're gonna do worse at everything. And if that happens, you get this, you wanna do it, that, and I mean, believe me, this is like, as probably not gonna, all in. But gosh, it is so critical to know that if you want to take part in these kinds of things, people like Nicole have dedicated immense time. And she forgot to leave one thing off her slide, which is her patience with the process, because a lot of what she's been able to accomplish has taken some time and some real perseverance. And so having that patience, having that perseverance, but also knowing, if your plate is full, what are you going to not do to take up things like this? Because this would not happen if she didn't make room for this in her life. And then the last thing is shameless plug. You talked about infrastructure. One of the things that we love about this project is that it builds infrastructure for so many more projects. And so for us, as an investment, it is a great way to invest in a very good scholar doing amazing work that's building the platform for you all to potentially partner with things that she's doing and bringing in, already working with the business school and engineering and others in the future. So building infrastructure is something that we are very excited about. And on that very last note, we have actually invested in admin staff that is purchasable with direct service per person. So unnamed person in this room has 25% effort purchased of an admin who has really, really good experience doing all the things. So if you have a smaller grant and you need a portion of support, we're trying to facilitate that and make that possible with really high quality. And you don't have to go hire them and train them and all the things. So just so you know that is something that we're working on in terms of our infrastructure that's available to grants. So I just want to really, really thank Nicole for this project specifically. Who knew soil was alive? Really? Wow. Like for me, that sounds ridiculous, but I learned so much, and it's the most basic stuff. But Rod, you mentioned conversation. She's got a media plan.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's the bigger picture, the media plan.
It's so interesting. And I know there's other interesting stories in this group to tell and to grow and to do. And I think that having Jennifer Speed and having her team, this shows an investment by Texas State in our research enterprise and growing it the right way, not like a pickup game, but like the planning process. And so I'm very grateful to Jennifer as well for joining us. And I would really encourage all of you to use this and other events to meet each other and find those partners that you can work with, just like you talked about. So thank you both.
Thank you, Melinda, for hosting this, and